The prosecutors had asked for 15 years, and they felt that that was appropriate given the grave mistakes and poor judgment that he conceded in tears. The only person to blame for me being here is me. There's no conspiracy to take down Martin Shkreli. I took down Martin Shkreli, Martin Shkreli said. No one else is to blame, not the court, not the government, not the media. Well, it turns out that Martin Shkreli has a couple things going for him these days. First, he is being ordered to turn over $7 million in property. Whereas on June 3, 2016, Martin Shkreli was charged in a superseding indictment with multiple counts of conspiracy to commit securities fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, securities fraud, and wire fraud. Whereas the indictment included a forfeiture allegation seeking the forfeiture of any and all property constituting or derived from proceeds obtained directly or indirectly as a result of the commission of any of the charged offenses. Whereas on July 26th, the defendant and the government stipulated to waive any right to have a jury determine the forfeiture. Whereas on August 4th, 2017, a jury found the defendant guilty of Count 3, securities fraud involving MSMB Capital, Count 6, securities fraud involving MSMB Healthcare, and Count 8, conspiracy to commit securities fraud involving Retrofin Unrestricted Securities, herein the offenses. Whereas, based on the submission of the parties and the proceedings herein, the court finds that the defendant must forfeit to the United States the amount of $7,360,450, which amount represents the total amount of proceeds obtained by the defendant as a result of the offenses. Therefore, it is adjudged the forfeiture money judgment is entered. All payments must be made by money order, certified, or official bank check payable to United States Marshals Service. The defendant shall cause checks to be sent by overnight mail. The entry and payment of the forfeiture money judgment is not to be considered payment of a fine, penalty, or restitution loss or amount of payment of any income taxes that may be due and shall survive bankruptcy. Finding that the conditions for forfeiture of the substitute assets have been met, the defendant shall forfeit his interest in the following assets, as well as all proceeds traceable thereto, up to the amount of the forfeiture money judgment. $5 million in cash that is currently held in an E-Trade brokerage account, Viera Pharmaceuticals, formerly known as Turing Pharmaceuticals, the album Once Upon a Time in Shaolin by the Wu-Tang Clan, the album The Carter 5 by Lil Wayne, and a Picasso painting. Subject to the terms contained herein, the United States Attorney General or his designee is authorized to seize the assets or any proceeds traceable thereto to collect the money judgment in accordance with Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 32.2, B3 and C. Can conduct any paper discovery, commence any applicable proceeding to comply with the statutes governing third-party rights, including providing requisite notice of this order and the forfeiture of the substitute assets. The United States shall publish this order on forfeiture.gov. Any person who has a legal interest in the substitute assets may file a notice within 30 days asking the court for a hearing without a jury to adjudicate the validity of their interest in the property and for an amendment of the forfeiture. The government may seek an amendment of the forfeiture, and in order to preserve the value of the substitute assets and ensure that the forfeiture money judgment's not diminished, damaged, or dissipated pending any appeal, neither the defendant nor anyone acting on his behalf shall take any action that would have the effect of diminishing, damaging, or dissipating the substitute assets. The execution of this order and the seizure of the assets shall be stayed pending the final disposition of any appeal. The substitute asset list in paragraph 4A above shall remain on deposit with the clerk of court. Within 10 days of the date of entry of this order, the defendant shall provide an accounting of his interest of the substitute asset list. Within 10 days of this order, the defendant shall advise the government of the location of the substitute assets, specifically the albums and the artwork. The defendant must obtain the government's approval as to where and how the albums and artwork are maintained and, if necessary, transported during the pendency of any appeal. Further, the defendant shall allow the government to inspect the albums and artwork at any time. The defendant, his heirs, assigns, agents, representatives, attorneys, and anyone authorized or acting on his behalf, as well as any persons or entities acting in concert, are restrained, enjoined, and prohibited from taking any action that would affect the availability, marketability, or value of the assets. Further, the defendant and his representatives shall take reasonable steps and bear the costs necessary to ensure that all the substitute assets are preserved and maintained in good and marketable condition, not damaged, diluted, or diminished in value. Any income or compensation accruing from any of the substitute assets, including but not limited to any consideration for defendant's interest in Viera Pharmaceuticals, shall be placed in a designated interest-bearing escrow account so that it may be made available for forfeiture. Further, the defendant shall provide the government with an accounting of any income or compensation within 10 days of the date received. The defendant and his representatives shall not directly or indirectly transfer, assign, pledge, waste, hypothecate, distribute, dissipate, dilute, or remove from the court's jurisdiction any assets. He can obtain the government's approval, is what the rest of that paragraph means. In the event that the defendant pays the forfeiture money judgment in full, or the defendant, pursuant to subparagraphs 1E or F above, sets aside enough funds to satisfy forfeiture money judgment, and no third-party claim is asserted, such judgment and the remaining restraints on the substitute assets set forth in this order shall be vacated. In the event that the defendant fails to comply with any of the terms in paragraphs 10 through 12 above, the government may seize the substitute assets up to the amount of the forfeiture money judgment, notwithstanding the pendency of any appeal. This order shall become final as to the defendant at the time of sentencing and shall be made part of the defendant's sentence and included in the judgment of conviction. This court shall retain jurisdiction. Signed, Judge Kiyu Matsumoto, U.S. District Court, Eastern District of New York. So that's only the first part of this, because we're not quite done with his judgment. Now, the judge doesn't release like a judgment document, so I'm just going to be pulling facts from various other sources. On Friday, Martin Shkreli was sentenced to 7 years in prison in addition to all of that forfeiture. In handing down the term, the judge cited that Shkreli had asked to minimize his conduct, asking for no more than 18 months, and she believed that that was not appropriate. The prosecutors had asked for 15 years, and they felt that that was appropriate given the grave mistakes and poor judgment that he conceded in tears at his sentencing hearing on Friday. The only person to blame for me being here is me. There's no conspiracy to take down Martin Shkreli. I took down Martin Shkreli, Martin Shkreli said. No one else is to blame, not the court, not the government, not the media. Prosecutors said he lied to investors in his MSMB capital and healthcare hedge funds about the hedge fund's size and performance. He used sham agreements for cash and stock of Retrofin to pay off the aggrieved stakeholders. Retrofin's another company he owned or ran. He also used a network of associates in an unlawful attempt to control Retrofin's stock price. He was convicted in August of securities fraud and conspiracy. He was acquitted of 5 other counts. They sought a term of at least 15 years, citing his 5-year scheme where he called himself the Pharma Bro and repeatedly lied to investors. He did not spend his victims' money on lavish trappings. He did steal money for his own personal benefit. It was his image as a successful businessman and entrepreneur that mattered most to him. In addition to his prison term, he was fined $75,000. He has to forfeit more than $7.3 million, including the album that we talked about. This is approximately 10% of his net worth, if I understand it correctly. So this is not the end of Martin Shkreli. This is just a major punishment for a fairly major crime. If I understand federal sentencing correctly, he will serve at least 85% of that. And 85% of 7 years is somewhere around 6+ years. So he's going to be in prison, an actual federal prison, for 6+ years. Some people have said it this way: his major crime was defrauding rich people, not just poor people. In other words, nobody prosecuted him when he raised the price of whatever the medication was by like 1,000%. It was some terrible multiple. It was a lot of money that people had to spend who don't have money because they have a medical condition and they're paying for it. So now they have even less money to pay for their medical condition. There was no crime there apparently, but there was a crime when he lied to investors. Okay, fine. So they got him on that. And what you could say is that he got himself on the Fed's radar by being such a jerk to the people with the pharmaceutical companies in the first place. So yes, it does come full circle. People do notice you when you're a jerk in general. So if he's being a jerk and he's doing stuff that could be potentially illegal, that's violating the one crime at a time law, basically. Okay. It's an actual life-saving drug to help boost your immune system during a time when your immune system is susceptible to life-threatening diseases and infections. What a freaking scumbag. If anything, I would be working my life I would be doing everything I could to make the drug more affordable for people. Oh my goodness. Absolutely scumbag. I really have a problem with human beings who don't want to add anything to the world and just want to take from what's existing and not give anything back. I just don't. It would be akin to burning fossil fuels for fun. Like, it's one thing if you're burning gas in your car to get to the post office, to get the letter that you need to respond to so that your client can do their thing in court. You're doing something with it to make the world a better place. Even if not every single thing you do is to make the world a better place. You know, that's sort of my own high personal standard, is I want to make the world a better place with pretty much everything that I do. And I don't mean like I'm making some huge difference. I just mean incrementally. I just mean that, like, positive effort. This is Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill and trying his best not to let it roll back down again. So yes, I realize the futility of what I'm doing, hence the Sisyphus analogy. But, you know, I'm the stubborn jerk who's going to keep pushing forward, whether it works or not, because one of these times it's going to work. One of these times, things are going to align. We'll create a standing wave of people in some kind of not proletariat revolution, because I think that's just a little bit of a fantasy, Marx, but something along those lines, some kind of non-violent but still changing revolution, force-altering or life-changing revolution of people who well, we're already here in the Creators Revolution. I was reading books about this 15 years ago that were telling me this was coming, and if I wanted to be part of it, I better start doing it now, 15 years ago. And here I am, a little bit behind, but we're catching up, and this is really awesome. You guys are really cool. I would like to thank all of you who support this channel. This is a supporter-driven channel. We would not really exist without you. YouTube pulled the adpocalypse last year, and our revenues dropped by about 2/3, and so Patreon has become absolutely essential, and your other various forms of support in the form of subscribing to the channels, or using your Twitch Prime subscription, or going to audibletrial.com/lawfulmasses. Those things help us. They help support the channel and help make more law videos. You may have seen that I've been creating more videos for you as the Patreon money has been increasing. This is not some awful plot of mine to grab all of your money. It literally means that your money is being able to support me, and I can do less of the other kinds of work that I have to do that take time away from videos, and I can focus more on the videos and less on the stuff that distracts from the videos. So it really is just a matter of getting to a certain budget, and I'll be able to pretty much switch over to full-time production, and you'll get some sort of high-quality law video every day, or at least 4 to 5 times a week. So, that said, I would like to thank my $50 plus supporters for the month of March. You are DJ Gilcrease, John Steele, Gavin Barnard, The Godslain, Evie, Andy, Kyle Mudrak, John H. Anderson, Vera Mintain, and Sean McNamara. Thank you very much. We also have a number of $5 plus supporters, and I have asked you for feedback, and I have received your feedback, and you want more tiers in between $5 and $50 with various rewards. And so I'm going through that. Give me another week or two, and I swear we will have that figured out probably before the end of March. We're also going to be offering merchandise and things like that. Like I said before, you can go to various places to support, patreon.com/ljfrench or sponsors.org/u/law or audibletrial.com/lawfulmasses. If anyone has any questions or suggestions for stories, they're welcome to email business@lawfulmasses.com. Does anyone have anything else to say? Otherwise, I'll bring in some music and go get some dogs. What do you think?
Something in the air, always something in the air. Inexplicable, I can feel it in
Alright, here we are. Zoom out. Mr. Dog, hello. Oh, you get a treat. You smell good. What were you rolling in that you smell good? Yes. She tried to take his treat out of his mouth. Of course she would. Hi. Hi. How are you? How are you? You having a good day? Is it cold outside? Hello. I'm gonna kiss.
So why didn't you call? So many years has gone by.
So,
But I think about
everybody say hi to
you
Nico
all the time.
and his happy
Looks
friends.
like you're changing and all. But why didn't you
What a good boy.
call?
So thank you everyone for joining me.
Always
I am Leonard French, your favorite copyright attorney. And I will see you in my next video and in the next live show. I love you all. Have a great week.